I will try harder.
Might I make an observation?
Always?
You try too hard. Let it guide you.
Pollux was by nature as serious a man as his Primarch, guarded and taciturn, but his face took on a look of consternation.
I find it difficult to let go. All my training and my culture, they speak against emotion. It is weakness for a warrior.
The training of the Legiones Astartes is among the most grueling within the Imperium. For each aspirant who succeeds, dozens of gravestones mark the failures of their peers. Yet the true test of any Space Marine is the test of war. Molding each Astartes into soldiers of peerless skill, only a few of these giants of war are marked forevermore in history as legends. For today, we shall elucidate an Astartes forged of among the direst of struggles. Captain of the Imperial Fist Legion, Alexis Pollux. Born on the frozen world of Inwit, Alexis Pollux would be raised by the ice hives of the planet. Alongside his twin brother, Elias, Alexis would, alike to his Primarch, endure the bitter cold and desolation wrought by Inwit's harsh winters as its heat drained from the dying star in orbit. With the ascension of House Dawn, the ice castes of Inwit would be united, and under the rule of the newly crowned Emperor of Inwit, Rogel Dawn, prosperity would abound. Yet with the arrival of the Emperor of Mankind, House Dawn and its Primarch would bend the knee to serve humanity's burgeoning Imperium. Given command of the 7th Legion of the Legiones Astartes, Rogel Dawn would draw recruits from his homeworld to further bolster its ranks. As part of the initial wave of recruits, Alexis and Elias would undertake the deadly and rigorous trials to join the Imperial Fists. Crossing the splintered lands, rice with ice-hewn labyrinths, and teeming with ravenous beasts, the lands bereft of sunlight would prove to be a worthy test of the brothers' strength. Garbed in rotten pelts and torn rags, rather than the Ice Tribe's reliable environmental suits, the brothers would endure the bitter cold and suffer the constant attacks of the predators of the wastes. Alexis would be injured by a 6-legged beast, the calf muscle of his leg punctured by its keen-edged claws. Escaping the ambush of the creature, Alexis and Elias would be separated. Elias would follow the trail of blood to find his brother. Always the stronger of the two, Elias would comfort his brother, despite his blackened hands succumbing to frostbite. Once more beset by the creature, Alexis would again suffer at the hands of the beast. His ribs broken, with the creature clamping its jaws around his arm, Alexis would seemingly be fated to die on the unforgiving ice dune. Confronting the beast, Elias would lure the monster to the peak of a crevasse. As the creature lurched to attack its new prey, Elias would grapple the beast and wrestle it over the cliff's edge. Yet despite his best efforts, the creature would fasten around Elias's leg as they both tumbled from the peak. Grabbing his brother's arm, Alexis would attempt to lift Elias to safety, yet be too sapped of strength to pull his brother from the fatal chasm below. Knowing his fate to be sealed, Elias would release his grip from his brother's lacerated and mauled arm and sacrifice his life to allow Alexis a chance at survival. Against the odds, Alexis would endure the physical and mental anguish wrought by the splintered lands. Surviving the trial, Alexis's wounds would be treated by the 7th Legion, and his destiny to ascend through the ranks of the Imperial Fists would be assured. Elias's strength living on within Alexis. As a formative member of the Inwit-born Astartes of the 7th Legion, Alexis would prove to be a stalwart and capable warrior. Gifted with an immense physique, it would not take long for Alexis to be regarded as a giant within his legion, both literally and metaphorically. Promoted to the rank of captain and commanding the 405th Company, Alexis's deeds would be of the most accomplished and well regarded among the Imperial Fists. Earning the favor of his Primarch, Pollux would rise to become one of Rogel Dawn's utmost senior officers during the Great Crusade. Given membership of Dawn's personal advisory council, Pollux would be instrumental in the formative years of the Legion's deeds under the command of their Primarch. It is for this reason that Pollux would be among the first of his legion to bring judgment to the traitors to the throne. With the War Master's betrayal and dawn of the Horus heresy, Rogal Dorn would be thrust into the conflict. Rescuing the escaped frigate, Eisenstein, from the conflict of Istvan III, Dorn would be burdened with the knowledge of his most cherished brothers fall from grace. Where the War Master's slaughter and madness might have broken the will of lesser men, Dorn would, despite his fury, seek counsel from the Emperor and attend to his sacred task of defending the Imperium. Tasked with the great work of fortifying the Imperium, Dorn would be unable to personally bring vengeance to the traitors to the throne. With this in mind, the Primarch of the 7th Legion would assemble a fleet to confront the War Master's forces to blunt their war effort. Named the Retribution Fleet, comprised of 500 ships housing 30,000 Astartes of the Imperial Fists, these warriors would be sent forth to crush the War Master. 1/3 of his legion's might would be dispatched under the command of veteran captain Yonad, with Alexis Pollux serving as his second in command. Though seemingly an overwhelming power in its own right for such an engagement, the Imperium would be blind to the treacheries employed by the ruinous powers. And for Alexis Pollux, he would bear witness to the full extent of its malignant power. The Retribution Fleet's misfortunes would be relentless from the start of its voyage. Upon their traversal to Istvan, the fleet would be racked by warp storms. 200 vessels would be torn apart by the roiling tides of the warp, their Geller fields disrupted, causing the ship's reactors to explode. The uncaring void claiming the Astartes and crew personnel spat from the ship's carcasses. Those of the fleet who survived would be disabled and deadened, of which Pollux would inhabit such a powerless wreck. The Imperial Fists would assemble what strength remained into 360 ships, comprised of 20,000 Astartes. With 1/3 of their number lost before battle had even been joined with the traitors, this omen would prove to be representative of the bleak fate of the Retribution Fleet. Captain Yonad had perished during the loss of the 10,000, placing Alexis Pollux as the most senior-ranking successor of his command. Rallying his men, Pollux, though honored, would regardless bear his burden alone. Yonad had been regarded as the finest naval commander of the Legion, and with his death, Pollux would need to prove himself as a capable and worthy inheritor of his mentor's teachings. Though officers within the fleet bore greater veterancy and battle honors, Yonad had chosen Pollux to lead. And Alexis, despite the fraught path before him, would not relent in his duty to uphold his master's teachings and honor the trust placed in him. Despite the advisements of his fellow officers, Pollux would not continue the fleet's push to Istvan. Cautious of further casualties to be incurred by the warp, Pollux's instincts would surmise that the storms had not been mere ill fortune. Establishing a base of operations within the Foul system, the largely agricultural system, for unknown reasons, would not be affected by warp storms to the same extent as other regions. The fleet's astropaths had been blinded, and despite the frustrations of the fleet's commanders, Pollux would continue to restrain his forces. Commanding the fleet to form around the ocean world of Thal II, small battle groups would patrol their headquarters. Sending scouts to scour the warp, the remainder of the fleet would drill ship-to-ship breach maneuvers and naval combat. Kept at battle stations as a constant for months, the preparation and vigilance of Alexis would prove invaluable. The 4th Legion, the Iron Warriors, under the command of their Primarch Perturabo, would attack the Retribution Fleet without warning. Hundreds of ships led by the Primarch's own Gloriana-class flagship, Iron Blood, would attack the Imperial Fists within the Foul system. Destroying the warship Hammer of Terror, the explosion of its death knell would quickly be followed by a dozen more ships. As the fleet dwindled in the blink of an eye, Pollux would command the fleet to concentrate fire on the spear tip of the assault. Regaining their composure, the outnumbered Retribution Fleet would fight a valiant defense against the advance of the traitors. Like a mechanized spiral of cogs, the Imperial Fists would close ranks and synergize their maneuvers to cover one another, each strike group bleeding the Iron Warriors for every loss they incurred. Quickly evening the odds of the battle, the Retribution Fleet would the Imperial Fists would make the 4th Legion pay for underestimating their capabilities. The Iron Warriors would fall back, reorganizing their fleet into a more cohesive force. Not squandering the opportunity, Pollux would lead his fleet in a counter-offensive to push back the Iron Warriors. Yet as the attack began, the astropaths of the Retribution fleet would manage to contact Holy Terror, with orders from Rogel Dawn to return to the Throne World. Despite the chance to cripple the Iron Warriors for the remainder of the war, the Imperial Fists would obey the orders of their Primarch and fall back from the Thal system. But while the Imperial Fists Retribution fleet had been blooded, its deeds within the Horus Heresy had only just begun. Despite their attempts to traverse the warp once again to return to Holy Terror, Pollux's fleet would be halted with the birth of the Ruinstorm across the stars. Drawn into its malevolent tides, the fleets would be scattered. Though blinded within the Ruinstorm, the navigators of the fleet would see a beacon of hope. Projected by the Sofa device, Pollux would lead his vessels to use the beacon to navigate to the nearest bastion of the Imperium, Ultramar. Meeting with the Ultramarines Primarch Roboute Guilliman, Pollux would aid the new Lord Warden of the contingent Imperium Secundus in fortifying Ultramar's defensive capabilities and fleet organization. Despite his recent spilling of blood with the 4th Legion, Pollux would form an unlikely friendship with the renegade loyalist warsmith of the Iron Warriors, Barabbas Dantioch. Pooling their knowledge of siegecraft and fortification, those sons of legions with a storied hatred and rivalry, their combined insight would aid in their analysis of the mysterious Sofa device. Though a galaxy apart, the Sofa device would allow the two captains to converse and share theories on its inner workings, which would prove crucial to the survival of the Loyalist war effort. But with the Ruinstorm's interference and cause for the arrival of the 1st Legion, the Dark Angels, to the planet of Macragge, they would harbor a dangerous cargo: the imprisoned Primarch of the Night Lords, Konrad Curze. The Night Haunter would escape the confines of the Dark Angel's flagship, the Invincible Reason, and wreak havoc upon Macragge. During his killing spree, Curze would find his way to Pollux's research station. Battling the Primarch of the 8th, Alexis would be no match against the Night Haunter. Yet with the intervention of his stalwart friend, Dantioch, Pollux would be transported from the Primarch's clutches with the use of the Sofa device. Consigned to the once distant planet of Sofa, with the Night Haunter's imprisonment, Pollux would remain with Dantioch to further analyze the Sofa device. For the remainder of the Horus Heresy, Alexis would protect the Sofa device alongside the Warsmith. Yet the influence of Curze would not relent from Pollux, with the Night Lord's arrival to the Segmentum Solar. Assaulting Sofa, the 8th Legion would attempt to capture the device to aid in their heresy. Standing against the Night Lords, Dantioch, Pollux, and a contingent of Ultramarines and Imperial Fist Astartes faced the traitors. Despite their attempts to seize the ancient Necron artifact, the Night Lords would be denied by the Loyalist Warsmith. Overloading the device, Dantioch with the aid of Pollux would deny the traitors their prize, and in doing so be killed by the deadly aftershock. With the Night Lord slain, Pollux would cradle his dying friend in his arms. Speaking words of encouragement alike to Elias, Pollux would once again lose a brother. Though not of his blood, Dantioch was nonetheless proven to be his most stalwart of friends and battle brothers. His death marking the end of the Horus Heresy in the eyes of Alexis Pollux. With the war for humanity won in the name of the Imperium, the Legiones Astartes had proven a weapon capable of sundering humanity if assembled into a large enough cause. Roboute Guilliman would pen the Codex Astartes, a tome outlining the new governing laws of the Astartes. The Loyalist legions would be sundered, and in their place, several successor chapters would redistribute the remaining survivors of the Great Civil War. Primarch Rogel Dawn would, upon analysis of the Codex, decry the idea that the Imperium should ever fear the betrayal of the legions, such as his own, that had proven invaluable to its ideals and survival. Yet with an incident between the Imperial Fist strike cruiser, Terrible Angel, being fired upon by the newly founded Navis Imperialis for failing to adhere to the Imperium's new order, Dawn would relent in his refusal to disband his legion. With Dawn conceding to the Codex's outlines and the Imperial Fists reorganized into the founding chapter of the 7th, several second founding chapters would be formed. The Black Templars, Fists Exemplar, Excoriators, and finally, the Crimson Fists. The Crimson Fists would comprise of the newest recruits of the Imperial Fist Legion, yet assign veterans of the Horus Heresy as its senior officers. The most circumspect members of the former Legion, they would be led by their first chapter master, Alexis Pollux, during their formative years. Alexis would apply his hard-won strategies and assimilate the as-of-now foreign teachings of the Codex Astartes to great success. Regarded by the history of the chapter as the Great Father, Alexis would lead the Crimson Fists for 800 Terran Standard years before his final battle. Within an unknown system designated as HR 8518, Pollux would face the Xenos species known as the Scythians. Coating their weapons in deadly venoms, a Scythian warrior monk would strike Pollux with a projectile that would infect Alexis with the deadly toxin. For days, Alexis would languish as the poison slowly destroyed his body from within. Succumbing to the Emperor's peace, the Crimson Fist would enact Pollux's final outlined strategies to destroy the Xenos. With Alexis succumbing to the Emperor's peace, the blood-drenched campaign made in the name of the Great Father, forever humbling the Xenos species to never incur the Imperium's wrath again.
Alexis, you must move. I see a face surrounded by rime-caked fur. The eyes are blue, the blue of glacial ice. Elias. It is Elias, my brother. He is still with me. Behind his face a blizzard fills the starlit sky with spiraling shards of white. You must move now. I feel him grip my arms and yank me to my feet. Bright pain flares through my body, jagged edges slicing and grinding with every movement. I scream again. The pain is how you know you're still alive.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Alexis Pollux's service was forever marked by the death of his brother. His strength found wanting, Alexis would strive to never again witness the death of those he loved as a result of his own weaknesses. As father to one of the most revered chapters of his Imperium, Pollux is vindicated 1,000 times over for his service to humanity. Learn from his strength, for alike to Pollux, all can improve and overcome their failings. And in such pursuits, you shall better serve his Imperium, and in doing so, protect those whom you cherish.